Hi everyone! The second week of Inktober is over, and I still haven't given up. My main tools are watercolor, ink, and black markers, a combination I've really grown to love. I use thick 200 grams paper that can easily handle plenty of water and layering without warping or tearing, which makes it perfect for experimenting with mixed media. The first prompt for my second week was heavy. I wanted to create something more conceptual for this one. After a bunch of sketches and brainstorming, I ended up with this illustration, a massive rock floating in space above a girl. After finishing the illustration, I realized the concept reminded me a bit of a scene from the original Star Wars, the moment when Luke learns to control the Force in the swamps. Here I used just a hint of watercolor and added the details with markers. The next prompt was sweep. I almost skipped it because I had no idea what to draw. It was the usual dilemma. I didn't want to go with something too literal, like a broom, but nothing else was coming to mind. In the end, I focused on one of the less common meanings of the word and managed to finish the prompt late at night. The idea is simple: a sweeping motion with hair swirling against a starry sky. In this piece, I finally got to use ink to its fullest potential, without holding back. I really like how it turned out. The starry sky feels deep, rich, and full of texture, and the hair has a nice sense of movement and flow. I'm still not entirely happy with the hair texture itself, though. It definitely needs a bit more work. The next prompt was sting. My idea wasn't particularly original. I drew a poisonous jellyfish with tentacles that can burn and sting. In this drawing, I tried to capture the movement and texture of water using ink. It came out a bit odd, but overall, I like how the medium behaves. It just takes more practice. I realized that wetting the paper more evenly before applying ink makes the drops and streaks look more natural and dynamic. Here I used a white marker again, and it paired beautifully with the ink. The next prompt was shredded. I came up with the idea of using thin masking tape, the same kind I usually use to frame the edges of a drawing, to keep watercolor and ink from bleeding. This time, I used it to create the illusion that part of the drawing had been torn or shredded. It turned out a bit differently than I expected. Not surprising, since it was my first attempt at this effect. At first, I wasn't too happy with it, because faces are always tricky for me. But to my surprise, this drawing was featured by Inktober for the shredded prompt. Still, I plan to keep practicing drawing people, so the faces look more natural and full of life. The next prompt was drink, and it was all about interpretation. I had so many ideas that it was hard to pick just one. By the end of the second week, though, I was feeling pretty worn out, so I decided to go with something simple and quick. A project I could finish in about an hour, or ideally 40 minutes. That's how this cup of cosmic starry coffee came to life. It came together surprisingly quickly, and I really like how bold and vivid it looks. The ink flowed beautifully, creating great texture and depth. The space feels rich and dimensional, just as I imagined. Once again, I used a white marker for the highlights, and I feel like white liners are becoming an essential part of my process. It's such a convenient and expressive tool that adds a perfect finishing touch to my drawings. And the final prompt of this week was trunk. It's a word with several meanings. It can refer to a tree trunk, a torso, or even an elephant's trunk. Many artists online ended up going with the elephant theme, and there were a lot of really creative takes on it. Amid that same fatigue, I came up with a fairly simple graphic concept: a cross-section of a large tree. On one side, there's nature, a forest, life, growth. On the other, the city, buildings, concrete, and noise. A very straightforward idea and composition, but at that moment, it was the best I could manage. I just didn't have the energy or inspiration for anything more. In this drawing, I decided not to use ink, since the piece was already quite contrasty and adding more would have been too much. Instead, I added a few light watercolor washes to the background, leaving the main contrast in the tree trunk cross-section. I finished the piece by refining all the details with thin black markers. And that's about it. The second week is behind me, with just a little over 2 more to go. So far, I am still on track. Good luck to everyone!